Hey friends, it's your boy Robin Black. Fighting is about fighting 3. It's crazy that we're already sitting here. I think this Fighting is about fighting. We're doing a bunch of different series, trying out a lot of different things. I think Fighting is about fighting will be the most valuable to me. I think it's the most precious to me because it was the very first thing we ever did. Very first thing when we sat down and we said, we're going to do our own YouTube channel. It was Mark and I. First night Mark and I met. And I just wanted to tell you what was going on. And I realized that the saying, fighting is about fighting, started out as sort of a call to action for people who, didn't feel like fighting was being represented to them the way that they saw it. Fighting is not about Twitter beefs, and it's not about, this guy really hates each other, and it's not about who might get a title shot or rankings or any of that stuff. It was about that. It was about that idea that it's the martial arts and the combat itself that fighting is about. But then when I had the chance, or I don't know if chance is the right word, when we were in a situation where we were going to make our own stuff, talk about fighting, Fighting is about fighting was the first thing that we did. And now it's become to mean something different. I'm using this to document our path and our journey from sitting in my living room, not even my living room, with a stack of records and terrible audio equipment, through until our YouTube channel is capable of letting us do breakdowns and big, interesting stuff and travel the world covering and representing fighting the way that we believe we can. And so this is here to document that. I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to be selfish, but there's a selfish element to it because I want to look back and I want to see in years and show my kids, look, you have to go try. You have to do things. You have to start somewhere, no matter where you are. You have to start, and it'll be hard, and you'll be a white belt. And that's okay. You'll be a white belt for a while, and then you'll keep getting better. And so I hope that's not too selfish, but that's part of it. But I'm also hoping that I bring some real value, that when people see someone else's story, mine and the people who I kind of meet and cross paths with, that there's value you can take from that. My mistakes, you might not have to make. We'll be able to show you the ones that we make. And if something cool happens, you can look and go, that's just some regular guy with a goofy shirt. If he could do it and Mark can do it, and then you can too. So Fighting is about fighting has become the documentation of making art, fighting art, commenting, analyzing, discussing, breaking things down, doing stuff with Ram Dean, building this thing. Fighting is about fighting has become the document, the little time capsule that we're going to look back at. And I'm so happy that you're here with us. I'm going to update you the things that we've been doing, and I want to tell you some stories. Because we're now YouTubers, if that's a thing. We make our own stuff about fighting. We've moved from the corner of an edge of a room in my apartment to this studio. This stuff is way better, sounds way better, we got cool stuff. And all that kind of stuff is happening. But I'm also a freelancer. That's what my job is. Outside of building our stuff on YouTube, people seem to want to pay me to talk about fighting, which is really, that's the greatest compliment in the world to me. So I went to Albuquerque last weekend. I'm going to tell you guys that story in a bit. And I met with Cub Swanson and Diego Sanchez and Carlos Condit and Erwan Lacour, a movement specialist, expert, guru. And it was amazing. But so far as where we're going, I don't know how far we are from Blue Belt, but we have definitely grown a lot. And when I looked at Fighting is about fighting 1, it says on the YouTube page at the time we're doing this that was 17 days ago. I cannot fathom that was only 17 days ago. And in that time, 58 people, I think, have been kind enough to go on to our Patreon, which is a website where you can help support work, artists' work and television and podcasters and stuff. And 58 people have done that, and it's helped a great deal. It's helped us buy equipment and pay to come in here with Stu and all kinds of really cool stuff. We're going to go down to Buffalo and shoot some stuff from there, from the UFC 210. So it's been really cool. And we've learned a lot of stuff. Wow, can you ever learn a lot in a short period of time? And I'm no smarter than any of you are. You can learn stuff. You go out and you're like, well, I don't know how to use, Google. Well, figure it out. It's there to be figured out. I don't know how to work this podcast device. Well, go figure it out. It's one little lesson at a time. These are the kinds of things, if you watch some guy or a team of me and my team sitting around and we are able to progress week to week, it's undeniable truth that you can do stuff too. And I hope that you do. I really do. It's a rule we have around here. You got to do stuff. But so freelance is now a part of it, and there's going to be some challenges, and we're cool with challenges. There's going to be some challenges to be able to make sure we can keep doing this, because I want to do a lot of this. We're going to tape Ask Robin Black tomorrow. I'm doing some stuff for ACB in Russia. After this, we're going to do some winning conditions stuff with some footage, where this we're one step back towards the breakdowns, Mm-hmm. And we're going to interview a PhD psychologist, Joel, later this week. We're going to do another thing with Mullins. We're going to try to do all of that. I was in Dallas last week before I went to Albuquerque. So when we found out that I'm having a good time, it's such a gift to be able to sit and hang out with you guys and share stories, because it makes me think. If I just talk some of these ideas out at home to my dog, that would definitely mean I'm crazy. But somehow if we put a camera here and we share it with you, I'm not crazy. So that's really good. I'm happy about that. But it's really awesome. So we moved on very well from 3 weeks ago when we had a full-time job. That we bounced back pretty well. So I was in San Diego when I found out that I wasn't going to have a full-time job anymore because of changes at the company. So that's the last time I saw my wife, because she travels in a musical, and she's in a musical called Kinky Boots on a U.S. tour. And so that was pretty down. When I saw her in Dallas, it was only 2.5 weeks later, and it's amazing how much your perspective can change and how in control you are of that. I could have easily done nothing in those 2 weeks. I could have shelled up. I could have just gone out and got drunk and complained. There's a million options we could have done. And Mark and myself and then Aaron and Morgan, Marc-Andre, and we came together and we made art, and we made podcasts, and we talked about fighting, and we brought in Ramdeen, and we brought in Mullins, and we did all that. And in only 2 weeks, when I saw her, I had this contentment, this feeling of that I had accomplished something. And she talked, she almost too much. It was adorable. She kept talking about how proud she was of me. And this is what happens when you do things. We didn't do anything remarkable. We just didn't accept that we couldn't do the thing we love to do. Mark loves to do podcasts. He loves to gather this stuff and release it and see how it moves and learn about it. And I love to do this. And some of you love to consume this stuff. So together it works. But we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't, and we did it anyways. It was scary. What if everyone laughed at me sitting in that living room? They could have. I knew they could have. And but in 2 weeks, we have almost 90,000 people have watched our stuff. Almost 6,500 have subscribed. There's 58 human beings who have decided that part of their entertainment dollar will support this. We're on SoundCloud. Are we on SoundCloud? We're on iTunes. We're on Google Play. What's the other one people are asking about? Stitcher. We got to do that. If you're some Stitcher, then we'll get that going. And YouTube. Then a friend of mine, I'll tell you more about him after I make sure it's okay for me to use his name. I should have asked already. Reached out and said, hey man, I'll take some of your ideas and gather them. So I'm on Medium now. All of a sudden, I'm on Medium, and it links back to this. And all this is happening, and it's because we took action. And I really am proud, and I'm not bragging, or maybe I am. If I am, I apologize. But I'm really proud. It's not even 3 weeks. Almost 90,000 people have watched this stuff. And more importantly than any of that, when I went to see my wife in Dallas, I was a different person than I was only 2.5 weeks earlier. My confidence was back. I could take pride in what we've done. And you can do those things too. It's literally just going and doing the work. And wherever you are, whatever you're a white belt in, you won't be a white belt in it forever. You go and you practice and you work and you fail and it's hard. We were lucky. Or, hopefully you make your own luck, but we've had some good fortune. They didn't laugh at me when I did that. And they probably won't laugh at you either when you go and do the thing that you want to do. So you just have to do it. Because I'll tell you, when you can walk in and you go to see your wife or your friends or whatever, and you have that confidence that comes with doing something and going for something and learning something and taking some risks, it's just so worth it. It's so incredibly worth it. The same day that I announced on Facebook or mentioned that my job wasn't, that department was going, and I've mentioned this a few times, but I have started to really remember a lot of the good times over at Fight Network, and a lot of my friends still work there. So I know that sometimes when people are like, oh, fuck Fight Network, that you feel like you're doing it in support, and it's very kind, but they're good people over there. There's some real good people over there, and I enjoyed my time there. But so when that happened, and I mentioned it out on Facebook that I'm a free agent looking for work, and I didn't even know Mark yet on that day. I think that's when he reached out to me. So TKO in Montreal, I'm commentating there with Rammer this weekend. Also, we're doing a bunch of stuff with Ramdean this week, and there's other fights we've already broken down, Ramdean and I, that'll be coming out this week. Stefan from TKO called and said, you're our commentators. Doesn't matter if the deal is with Fight Network, we'll make it work. So that was very kind. And the very second one to reach out was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Kim at Monster Zim in Korea. And then he got me on Facebook phone, which I didn't even know was a thing. In certain areas of the world, everybody uses Facebook phone. I use Skype or Google Hangout, or Gmail has a little one, but I didn't even know Facebook had one. And so I spoke with him, and we talked about a number of different things. And he said, we'd like to hire you to do some work. So it would be one of my freelance gigs. And he said, your first assignment, if you're interested in doing interviews, would be to go to Albuquerque and interview Cub Swanson. Who is, of course, if you know me, if this isn't your first time here, Cub Swanson is my favorite fighter. Now, and I want to specify something. He's my favorite artist. He's my favorite fighter. The way he fights, the way that he, trains, and the way he grows as a martial artist. That's what he is, my very favorite of them. And there's some other close ones. I got others. There's a lot of fighters I admire, but he's definitely been one, as somebody to study, that's always been very special for me to study. Now, the fact that he's also a really cool dude, and we've become friends, is incidental to that. That's just gravy, icing, tequila, whatever you want to call it. That's just killer. But had it turned out that Cub Swanson was kind of a dick, I would still be analyzing him exactly the same. So when I say he's my favorite fighter, he's also turned out to be a really awesome human being, but that is not why I was a fan of his. That's just awesomely cool. So anyways, they say go interview Cub Swanson. I'm like, man, is this even for real? A awesome big website in South Korea wants to hire me to go to Albuquerque to interview my favorite fighter for them. So that's where I was. I was in Albuquerque. And the gig, check it out, monsterzym.com. You'll see a lot of Korean characters all over the thing. And I show my friends sometimes, and it's like the most, other language possible. And I'm like, the new home of Robin Black. And it's always really good. But I love them. They're great people, and it pushed me a great deal because I had to go and hire a production company and work with them and, work with the GM. There was a lot more work actually than I realized when I agreed to do it, but I learned a lot of stuff. So I flew to Albuquerque. Cub immediately was like, no problem. It was also a good time because as much as I love to analyze his work, and he likes that I do a good job of analyzing his work. And as a result, you would have a kind nature towards me. He still will not be afraid to say no if it's too close to the fight, because the fight's going to come first. which is another reason why I really like this martial artist. And I respect it. But we happened to be 3 weeks out, which is what we targeted. He said, no problem, I'll be in Albuquerque. And then we discussed doing some physical breakdowns, breaking down some of his stuff. So anyways, the long and the short, then I get a hold of Diego Sanchez, because although Monster Zim has only asked for Cub Swanson, I'm like, well, I'm in Albuquerque. We should see what else I can get. And I got Brandon Gibson, the coach, and Brandon and Cub. This will all be coming out. I'll make sure that people get the link. It'll be on Monster Zim, so I'll try to spread it. But Brandon Gibson, new friend, super brilliant guy. And it was really cool. Every time I mentioned his name after I saw him, to Condit, to Erwan Lacour, to other people, they all talked about how talented he was, but they also talked about what a good human being he was. And I texted him to tell him that, because that's the kind of thing you like to hear. You know, it's cool that you've developed the ability to work with an athlete or whatever your thing is. But knowing that there's a lot of people going through the world saying that you're a good person. They talk about his work ethic, that he's a family guy with a full-time job and a top coach, and he handles a once a year thing that has something to do with hot air balloons, I think. I'm not exactly sure. But when people talk like that, I was happy to be able to pass that on to him, because I'm sure that feels nice to hear. And he is a killer dude. And watching him and Cub work together was just like right up close. You know, it's like being able to watch your favorite artist in person. So I tried not to interrupt too much, but I'm sure I talked a lot more than maybe, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not always there. This is interesting. That guy is at the side of the cage. So that was really great. It was really great. And Diego is hilarious. And he cut a full-on wrestling promo yelling at the camera and the whole thing. Diego's a really cool guy. Then I hung out to watch them train. Diego's like doing the splits on a thing, and he's got some weird contraption on his head, and he's standing on some other thing, and he's yelling super loud, and everyone in the gym can hear. And I'm like, oh yeah, Diego Sanchez is actually crazy. Okay, cool. Which makes sense. He's also an incredible human being. And you don't get, of course he's a little odd. He's Diego Sanchez, right? You don't become as special at what he does doing the normal things. You know what I mean? That guy, and maybe more than he needs to, but I'm telling you, like, he had some kind of weird helmety thing that was made out of duct tape, like weighting his forehead and all kinds of crazy shit. And some device that he had bought online that baseball players use to strengthen their ankles, and all kinds of odd stuff, but a lovable guy. And then the next day, I got to go, so all those will be up, and I'll make sure that people get to see them, because I want to spread the Monster Zim to North America as best I can. I'm meeting with them again tomorrow to discuss what the next project will be. So it's or Wednesday, so that's really exciting. So then the next day I go, and Erwan Lacour owns MoveNat. He's created to sort of customize this human movement, body development, mind development. It's very fascinating, and I'm going to get into it on Ask Robin Black tomorrow about movement and how it relates to fighting. There's a question or two that connects well, and I'll be able to tell you about Erwan, and he's a very cool guy. So lo and behold, Carlos Condit is there. One thing I want to mention, if Condit happened to tell me, or anybody else around me, about his comebacks or who he might be fighting or when he might be fighting or what he might be doing, I'm sorry, I wouldn't tell. And I know that's counterintuitive to breaking news and stuff, but I couldn't say. If that man, I probably shouldn't have even said I saw him. In fact, to be honest, Carlos at the end said, yeah, it was great seeing you again, man. You know, hey, don't tell anyone else here, or don't tell anyone you saw me. But I think what he meant was, you were involved in some conversations about me today, or overheard some, so just, you know, and I'm not gonna. That's going to be his news to announce if and when in 8 months he's fighting, or 3 weeks he's fighting, or he's fighting Floyd Mayweather, or he's decided to, you know, he's stepping in for George, or he's going to become a school teacher. That's his life to talk about. And I mean that. You know that gossip and that type of, did you hear this, is not my thing. And it's no judgment on people who that is their thing, because I know there are people who want the latest things to talk about. But to me, I sat with George St. Pierre for hours in Kingston, and he told me the whole deal, but he didn't tell me I could say anything. And anyway, so I sidetracked, but I'm a big fan of that guy. So there's points in the day where I'm sitting there. Erwan has become a great friend, and there's a lot to learn from this man. But I'm having conversations, and Cub Swanson and Carlos Condit are sharing the stories of their first fight. And so Cub's first fight was in Tijuana for $100 in like a little bowl. And there's all these people yelling down at them, and he's talking about it. And then Carlos is like, my first fight was in a rooster pit, like in a cockfighting pit. This is why these guys are so special. Is the next generation of fighters going to be special? Yes, in many different ways. If you like McGregor didn't come up fighting in a cockfighting pit. And when you like the next guy in 10 years, they won't have to anymore. So guys like this, and obviously, Jorge Masvidal is one of my guys. Guys like this grew up in a different time. When they started fighting, nobody knew really what the hell they were going to do, and they didn't necessarily know. Cub was mostly a jiu-jitsu guy at the time. And he's going in there, guys are kicking him in the head in a pit in Tijuana that he drove down to for $100. So to be around those stories, very inspiring for me. So I'll tell you about Erwan and about his stuff on Ask Robin Black. We'll shoot that tomorrow. And then that'll be Ask Robin Black 4? Wow, crazy. Humming along. So then the next day, or that day after, Cub invites me to go out, him and his buddy Danny, who's a training partner of his, great kickboxer, a long-time kickboxer, been kickboxing his whole life. And he's training with him because he's got a fight coming up against a kickboxer. So they take me out, we go get some tacos and a couple beers, and then I see that there's this poster and there's fights in Albuquerque. And so Cub calls his buddy Fox. Fox is Wilson Fox. He's a photographer in Albuquerque, and he was like a kindred spirit. Only he and I were drinking because the fighters weren't. So we acted like idiots at the fights. Well, I did. I can't speak for Wilson. But it's like meeting a like-minded guy. He came up photographing all these fighters, knowing that they were doing something special, and that those moments needed to be documented. And for the fighter themselves, some of them will be fighting for a world title one day, and they'll really want to be able to see moments from those fights. Other ones may only have 3 or 4 fights in their life. And to be able to have somebody like Wilson who cared enough to document their things, was probably really meant a lot to a lot of these fighters. So he's someone like me. He does photography. I talk and analyze, but we kind of do the same thing. So we hung out and got kind of drunk and watched awesome fights with fucking Cub Swanson and his buddy Danny. And it was really cool. Again, if Cub wasn't the coolest guy in the world, I would still love his work. It's kind of separate. The fact that he happens to also be a really cool dude and a really nice human being is just great. But somehow I think there's a connection to the type of art that people express and who they are. Jorge is the sweetest dude too, and Carlos is a bit crazy. Carlos a little bit crazy, like he's a bit like like that kid who's gonna do something wrong. Like he's a good dude. But there's something in these guys. So it shouldn't come as a shock to me that Cub Swanson is such a kind human being, because it makes sense. That's part of why the way he expresses himself is so interesting. But so I got to go, and the fight culture in Albuquerque is so cool. Like its own little world of fighting, And there were some great fights, some young guys, some guys who, were on their way up and now have a family and just love the chance to get in there and fight. Lots of like girls with lots of makeup, If you like Latina girls with tons of makeup, you should go to the fights in Albuquerque. Also, for most of us who have been around fights our whole lives, the audience is like 5% female. In Albuquerque, it's like 35%. And I'm sure Holly Holm had something to do with that as well. But yeah, so we got kind of drunk and then watched some fights, and it was awesome. And Danny gave me a shirt, Cub gave me a bunch of Cub stickers, and yeah, I took them. Yeah, I'm a mark still, And I came home last night, and here we are sitting here. So it's been a really fascinating one, 17 days, and I can't believe how much life has changed. And it's still going to continue to. But so we'll do tonight, next 2 nights, and then I'm off to Montreal for TKO. And I get to work, me and Ramdeen get to commentate unreal fights, unreal. And then I go off to Buffalo on Sunday, and the boys are going to come with me. We're going to try to shoot some content from there. I sent a message to Rogan, seeing if he would do our podcast. So if anybody feels like tweeting Joe, actually don't bug Joe. What am I saying? Don't bug him. Don't bug him. If he's got time, he'll do it. I hope. So we're reaching out to Joe, and then we're back for a couple days. We're going to try to do as much as possible so we can keep giving you stuff about fighting. Ramdeen and I are trying to do 8-10 different fights, you know. And then I'm off to Russia after that. I'm off to Russia. The first people that reached out to me after I was a free agent, was TKO. I'm doing it this weekend. Monster Zim, went to Albuquerque last weekend, interviewed my favorite fighter, went to fights, got drunk, it was fun. An ACB out of Russia, going there next week. And Mark, who's sitting right there. You just have to take something comes, you have to pursue it. And if it isn't coming yet, you have to pursue the things necessary to make those things come. I didn't just wake up and people started calling me. I fucking worked. I worked the last 10 years. And I worked the 10 years before that. But if you're working at something that's fun, it's not really work. There's lots of cliches about that. And they're true. They're really true. And all you got to do is start, man. All you got to do is start. You know? I got all kinds of other things on the go, too. There's been conversations about getting the breakdowns going again. I'll have updates on that soon. I have a feeling we'll be doing breakdowns in the studio, I'm going to say within 8 weeks, and it could be shorter. It's not a rule. It's not a promise. If it's 9.5 weeks, you know, don't kill me. But we're going to do it. There were conversations today, real ones about that. Oh yeah, and Sunday in Buffalo, I'm doing stuff for UFC.com. So lots of stuff. And you just got to go out there and go after it. You know, you have to. You have to. I know most of the times I'm like, you don't have to do anything. And I mean that in almost anything. When you hear me say, you have to drink coffee, you don't have to do it. But you do have to get off your ass. You have to. That's the only rule we have around here. And that's what fighting is about. Fighting, I'm hoping somehow evolves through documenting where we're going, can help you go, oh yeah, it's all doable. It's all, whatever it is you're after, whatever it is you're fighting for something, go fucking fight for it. You know what I mean? Because fighting is about fighting. It's not about talking, and it's certainly not about complaining or looking at something and saying, oh, well, that guy got this. It all starts, you have to start. And to start, all it is starting. When you start thinking, even like when I think about working on a breakdown, and I can share this with you because I know this is what sometimes you're going through. When I think about all the 27 steps that's going to happen to do it, it seems daunting. But when I think, oh, I just start watching one of the fights, make a couple notes. You just start. Then it all just starts unfolding. You just have to start. You don't have to figure out the end. In fact, if you do, it's not going to be the end you think it is. It's going to change many times. You just have to begin. You have to begin. And when I fucking saw my wife, I was a whole different guy than I was only 2.5 weeks earlier. And it all is owed to starting. I just started. Just fucking started. Me and Mark, we just set it out. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. And that's what you should do, you know? And I have friends that don't do things, and they're like, well, I got to make sure that I get the audience first, and I'll set this thing up, and I have that, and then, you know, it's not that. You begin. Because wherever you're going to be, you just fucking put the gi on, and you don't know how to tie the white belt. And this thing, and the guy, and every single one of those black belts was once you. Every single one of them. Every one. Except maybe BJ Penn, who was like really good off right from the beginning. And so there are some exceptions, but pretty much everybody else. You know, I'm not BJ Penn, neither are you. So fuck BJ. I love BJ. So, and even that gets exaggerated because BJ or anyone else that we look at, oh, well, this guy got all the breaks, or he was born lucky, or he was naturally talented. I don't believe there's such a thing. Things BJ did, boxing in his backyard with his brothers, moving his body, tumbling, learning about physical awareness. There was something in the coming up that when he made a lateral move over to Jiu-Jitsu, he pivoted into Jiu-Jitsu, but wherever he was going required work, knowledge, learning, gathering of information. So everybody does it. We all start at white belt. And I don't know where we are right now. I'm not willing to call us a blue belt yet, but it's moving pretty quick. But it does that. Same thing when you go and you train martial arts. If you love it enough that you do it all the time, and you're dreaming about it, and then you're online constantly consuming it, and then you're reading books on it, and then you're going to the drilling class, you get better really, really fast. So whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is I'm telling you to get off your ass and do, you know what it is. You know what it is. People say they don't know, but if you really ask yourself, what do I really love? You know. But you just have to start it. You're going to be a white belt, or maybe you're already past that. But it's not where you're going to end up. It's where you begin, and you begin now. So shut this thing off, close your computer, and go and do some shit. Go do something. And then tell me what you did. Send me something on Twitter or right here in the comments. And thank you all very, very much. It's a real gift for me to be able to do this with you. And thanks for our patrons. Going and saying you're going to take some of your entertainment dollars and invest it in us to try to help us, that's not anything I even thought about before. And it really, there's something very meaningful, something very over and above there. But go do some shit. Shut the computer. Close it. Black out.